Earlier in the actually, for people who haven't heard this, earlier a Labour MP, well, it was actually Tahir Ali, the Labour MP for Birmingham, Hall Green and Moseley, who has formed, asked the Prime Minister the following question, peeps. Have a watch.
November marks Islamophobia Awareness Month. Last year, the United Nations Human Rights Council adopted a resolution condemning the desecration of religious texts, including the Quran, despite opposition from the previous government. Acts of such mindless desecration only serve to fuel division and hatred within our society. Will the Prime Minister commit to introducing measures to prohibit the desecration of all religious texts and the prophets of the Abrahamic religions?
Starmer stands up, does his, of course, doesn't say no. Doesn't mention that we're a country of free speech, Richard Tice.
I was in the chamber listening to it, and I thought, well, when's Christophobia month? When's anti-Semitism month? Yeah. Why does Islamophobic need a month? Maybe every month should be saying we don't want racism, we don't want hatred. But what this does, and him standing there, he actually creates division, disunity, disharmony by highlighting something. He's the one who's discriminating. What we should be saying is we don't want any of that nonsense, right? We've already got existing laws that deal with it. We don't need any more laws. We've got too many laws in the first place. I'd quite like, actually, the police to focus on just, preventing real crimes like stabbing people, raping people, shoplifting, what most drug dealers, most people will call real crimes. And look, no one wants to desecrate a religious text. It's just not form. It's not the done thing. Make it morally unacceptable. That's the way to deal with this stuff. In a society that recognises we're founded on Christianity, we welcome all faiths, all skin colours, all genders. But here's the point. Stop this banging on about division. Month this, month that, month the other. I don't want any of it.
So my father-in-law, Rob, who's a mad reformist, OK, genuinely, and gets really, really angry about all sorts of things. He's already got angry about the farmers. We'll talk about that in a sec. He's always wanted to put his St George's flag out because he's proud of being British. And he tried to once. I think the council wrote him a letter or something saying he couldn't do that. So my argument would be alongside this. I'm absolutely with you. Have your religion. But don't shoot. I mean, it's like I say to my daughter, don't you dare tell me I can't have my religion. Don't you have your opinions. Don't tell me I can't have my... Don't try and counsel mine, because apparently you've come here, you have yours, I have mine. Don't mine are what, suddenly out of date or wrong. That's what I hate. That's what I find so wrong.
The real focus is, for those who are lucky enough to enjoy the privilege of coming to live in the United Kingdom or being born in the UK of a different faith, why don't we just focus on integrating, learning the language and contributing by working, so that we can grow the economy, so that everybody gets better off? Because guess what? Better off people means that actually society is improving and people's health is getting better, people live longer, happier lives, and that's how we live in harmony. When people get poorer and you create this level of division, and this is what has happened under the last government and what's happening under this government, then people get more stressed, more anxious, and that's the road to ruin.
And you talk about division. This will do... I mean, Starmer should have quashed that straight away, but he's playing to an MP who's playing to his constituency, and it sends the most appalling message.
In the same way that just yesterday in the chamber, the utterly feeble Minister for the Foreign Office, one Hamish Falconer, he confirmed the government's position was that if Benjamin Netanyahu comes to the United Kingdom, well, he might well be arrested because of the daft ruling of the not-fit-for-purpose International Criminal Court that countries like the US are not a member of. And if they're going to make such daft rulings, frankly, we shouldn't bother with it either.
Do you think the ICC... honestly, I find it... There again, an organisation that's going to spend its time saying arrest Netanyahu, not arrest some terrorists, whether you agree with Netanyahu or not. It's the same thing, isn't it? Everything gets jumped upon, it seems, by the bedwetters, as I now call them. Let's talk... I mean, that's the first thing today. We've just had a guy... Mike Cullen, who's a fourth-generation beef farmer, in his tractor at Dover with hundreds of farmers, and you and Lee and Anderson and Nigel Farage were at the farmers' protest a week and a half ago. There's hundreds of tractors right now blockading Dover, supported by thousands of locals, saying we don't want foreign food to come in because this is what the government seem to have been saying. So we're going to screw British farmers who provide us with our food, and we're then going to import food which is more expensive, which will mean that supermarkets charge you, the punters, more money. Can you explain something to me as a successful businessman before I implode? How the hell does that make any bloody sense?
It makes no sense at all. 30 or 40 years ago, we used to produce about 80% of what we consume.
Yeah.
Right? That number is now less than 60%.
Right.
We should be encouraging farmers to produce more food with more technology here in the UK. We've got our standards and others that subscribe to similar standards. Fine. But fundamentally, and the government, for example, should be buying British British food for our schools.
Is that racist
and various
to
other...
do that?
Oh, apparently it's whatever. It's just ridiculous. In the same way I discovered last week that the Ministry of Defence doesn't buy British steel in order to make its ships and its tanks, for heaven's sake.
Why?
I don't know. They're not part of the critical list because it's not compliant with net zero, because it came from a blast furnace. So they want to create more CO2 by bringing more steel from overseas that sends our jobs and our money overseas. And I had a rant and a rage in the House of Commons today, by the way, against the business secretary, because, yes, 1,100 jobs have been destroyed.
Yep. And more, probably,
and more.
Ancillary jobs.
This is just the start. And it's all because of net zero, all because of the lunacy of this. And I explained to the business secretary, who clearly doesn't understand, he had the temerity, by the way, to call me out of touch. When actually
Called you out of touch?
He called me out of touch twice. I nearly leapt out of off the bench, actually.
Did you? And punched him? That
well, not quite that.
No. Ryan's going, no, we're not doing that at all.
But the temerity of the chap, and I explained that if we're not careful, if we carry on down this lunatic path of lots of forcing car manufacturers to make electric vehicles and no other fossil fuel-based vehicles, in combustion engine vehicles, then guess what? They're losing money and they will go bust. And all of these jobs are going on the scrap heap. The scrap heap, the altar of net zero. And it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs.
To follow, in effect, an ideology of... And by the way, I had several callers earlier. It would be fair to say that this was started by Theresa May. It was taken on by Boris Johnson. It wasn't changed by Sunak. They are in the dock as well. But this great obsession, and I'm probably out of touch, right? To reach this figure by 2030, COP29 or COP out, none of the big countries that create the most carbon, whatever it is, I've no idea, they were nowhere to be seen.
Because they realise it's a waste of time.
Yeah,
the only other leader of note was the Taliban were there.
The Taliban were there with Starmer. It was brilliant. But we've got all these people with all these problems in this country, and we're trying to achieve something that really is unachievable, whilst charging our people for that. It's almost as if they're taking us all, and I mean this genuinely, as idiots. It's almost as if there's the plan, and I don't care who I harm to get there. I'm not going to listen to anybody. Here's the best bit. A guy phoned me up. He went today because he was interested, not in buying an electric car. They explained to him, this is what I'd love you to ask the business secretary, that as a dealership, you're going to screw them as well, because if they don't sell electric vehicles and they sell a diesel or petrol, they'll be charged £12,000. So now they're telling people what cars to sell and they're telling us what to buy.
I had the boss of a massive car dealer privately phone me up and he said it's a catastrophe and they're going to stop selling cars so they don't get fined. Because the truth is that the private sales of electric cars are actually falling. Yeah. The only people that are propping it up, because they're so expensive and because of range anxiety, the only people propping up is the public sector and across the board, whether it's the NHS or Motability and people like that. That's propping the market up. Look, you can't force a market. You can't force consumers to do something they don't want to do.
Ford also today asked the government to introduce incentives to encourage drivers to buy. So we've got a government that's saying, I'm obsessed with net zero. We're not going to drill, we're not going to frack, we're going to build some wind farms. And by the way, when that doesn't work, because it won't, we're going to import the gas and electricity at 3 times the cost, which you put your bills up. And now with cars, we're going to do exactly the same.
And if you import the electricity or the gas, that creates even more CO2, sends you jobs and money overseas. And by the way, that means that they build thousands of pylons in constituencies like mine, which my constituents are absolutely furious about. This whole thing this is the biggest cult, the biggest religion now, this ideology that is taking over these people. But you know what? It's making us all poorer. And it's destroying jobs. People in Luton are raging. the whole thing is an absolute catastrophe.
Can I ask you something? So there you are. There's 5 of Reform MPs, and you're very, as a party, you're about Britain. You're about common sense. I think it's sort of almost symptomatic of talk, if I'm completely honest. I spoke to an MP once who said that they I won't name her, they went in with such ideas, and the machinations of Whitehall and just government and the general crap just drags you down and you don't feel like... You're several months into this, and there's something every day that anybody with common sense is barking mad. Today, electric vehicles... Does this sustain you and Nigel and Liam?
Yeah,
or does it get you to the point where you go... It's just too much of this crap.
There are times, actually, including in the chamber today, where I was literally burying my head in my hands, thinking this is madness. But because we've got the conviction and the passion and the experience to know that we're right, we know actually we've got to keep driving on. And we're going to see it succeed in America when Elon Musk gets rid of vast swathes of a wasteful, bloated American state sector. And that's what we need to do here in the UK. So you cut wasteful, corrupt government spending, you cut the size of the state, get rid of daft regulations, create some growth, then you cut taxes. That's what you do. There's another issue which we must just touch on, actually. On Friday, there's the big debate in the House of Commons about the assisted dying.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that.
Which we must just touch on because there's what's called a wrecking amendment has been submitted. What it basically means is some of the MPs think it's a good idea, having created a whole national debate, lots of people focused on it, of either view, that's absolutely fine and respectful. They're trying to basically say, well, let's have an amendment which kicks it into the long grass, have an inquiry and a long consultation for months and months and years, which means there wouldn't be a vote on the main decision of actually whether or not to allow it to go to the committee stage and to the House of Lords and go through the 6 or 9 month process. I tell you what, I mean, that is damaging to democracy. If you say to people, we're going to have a debate and a vote, and then you have a debate, you say, no, you can't have the vote.
Let me ask you, I wouldn't...
Absolutely just shameful.
You might not want to say which way you're voting. That's your business.
No, I'm voting, I'm very clear about it. I've seen someone die in absolute horrific agony, utter pain, and that seared my memory. So I respect those who've got the other side of the view, of course, but for me, I think when you are terminally ill, subject to the safeguards, which are the strongest in the world, I think actually it's your personal choice. Do you want to end it or do you want to suffer the indignity of horrific, violent, agonising pain?
And to be fair, I said this earlier on the show, I saw that with both of my parents. And when I saw my 87-year-old dad, the Queen Mother's private secretary ex, a man of real, I mean, honestly, and I'm not going to, listen, he was my dad, sitting in a nappy being fed a yoghurt. I'm not having that, right? And they both, and I mean this with the greatest respect, died very quickly, and I was pleased. But today I was doing Plank of the Week, and there was a guest, Samara, on there, and she made a really, really salient point, which I want to put to you. She said, the other side of the argument is, think of Captain Tom Moore, that amazing man who raised millions and walked up and down at the age of 100, and how his family, his disgusting daughter and son-in-law, have destroyed his legacy by all the money and the buildings and the lies and whatever. That's the side of the argument that says, will there be people who are making decisions about other people? This is a really important point.
It's a very important, but actually, the evidence that what works is what they've been doing for 25 years in the state of Oregon in the United States. And this bill that has been very brilliantly led by Kim Leadbeater has very similar, if not tougher, safeguards. You have to be terminally ill. Doctors have to sign off that you are likely to be you're likely to die within 6 months. It then has to go to a judge, and then only you have to be compos mentis, only you can make the final decision and actually essentially administer the pills or whatever to yourself.
What about my suggestion as well, that if you, at a young age, not to us, but 30, 40, 50, you write in your will, if I have blah, 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 I'm incapacitated, I wish this to happen. Is that not a good way? The compos mentis argument...
That's a separate debate, but that's not where this bill is.
Right.
And
do you think it'll get through?
I think it'll be very, very close. And to be honest, I wouldn't have a bet on it. Over 500 MPs...
It's an open bet.
It's completely open.
Vote, by the way.
And it's completely open. You know, in Reform, we have very respectful, differing views on it, and we may all 5 vote. I suspect over 500 MPs will vote. I don't know which way it will go. I just think that the country wants a proper debate on it. I think we should go. I hope it goes through on Friday. That's not the end of it. You then go to committees. You might make some further amendments. Listen to some other good suggestions.
Is she a Labour MP, Ken?
She's a Labour MP. I've been working with her on it. I think it's taken over her life. She's very brave to take it on, taken a huge amount of flack for it. But I think we should be grown up enough to say, if we really are the most admired legal system in the world, then surely we should be able to design some safeguards and a review to look at it and see what's working, what needs tweaking. That's what they've done elsewhere. And I feel I don't like it when other places, other states, other nations do things better than we do, because we haven't got the gumption, the courage, the oomph, the political leadership.
We haven't got the political leadership.
To say, do you know what? Let's give it a go, and if it's not quite perfect, we'll tweak it.
Yeah,
we'll
but no. But you've got to understand. I don't think we've got a government that's proud to be British. And one of the things that dragged me to vote for reform, and I was very, very honest about that last time, was that, I was listening to people, and I had to be really straight when I was doing the broadcasting. Purdah, we can't say, but I was listening to people say reform are far right, and I was thinking, no, you're talking about the stuff that I was brought up on. That was conservatism. I'm actually proud of being British. I hate what the Tories did at the end, loathed it. High taxation, no army, no military, all of that. And I think it's, going back just to finish with you, I do think that all politicians of all parties, right, and I know you're led by a man who has an incredible... By the way, can I just say this to you? Did you see Starmer on this morning? Tell this to Nigel from me. We were doing this today. So Andy Peters, who I know...
A couple of days ago, yes.
Yeah. So he says to me, so what's... No, but it was a dick in the ribs for reform again. He goes, so what's it like having a lower approval rating than Nigel Farage, that you live in a country? And I thought to myself, that's the mainstream media again, isn't it, Nigel Farage? But Nigel Farage would be the most popular politician in this country, I suspect, right now.
And right now, he is the most popular leader.
And has a huge responsibility. But in my mind, a Trump, whether it's Nigel or somebody else, there is going to be a situation, in my mind, where the people the silent majority, middle America, who cast their vote and do everything right, are going, we ain't taking this anymore, Richard, we're not.
And that's because the mainstream media don't understand what's going on in streets, houses, up and down the country, where people are essentially becoming poorer, are worse off financially and the quality of life, and because of the huge population growth that we've seen. And that's what Trump did. He built a coalition of people who said, I might not agree with everything that you stand for. I might not even like you as an individual, but I think you're going to make me better off. And for that, I'm going to vote for you rather than the other person. And I think that's where we're going to be over the next few years. As we get worse off under this Labour government, the electorate will look around and say, well, who do I trust to make us better off financially, to make us, essentially, to have a bit more money in our pocket at the end of the week, so that we can afford to go and have a night out, go to the pub, go to a football match,
Here's a question I didn't think I was going to ask you. If the only way in 4.5 years' time to rid this country of a Labour government because of the voting system that we have would be for the Tory party and the Reform Party to do some deal, would that ever happen?
Look, who knows what happens in 4 years? Events to boy events. But we've got a clear plan, a clear route to saying we're the only people who can deal with all these issues, who've got the courage and the leadership to sort out the migration, sort out the economy, sort out the waste, stand up for our values, who we are, our Christianity, our heritage. And we think we've got the track record because we've all been around the block. We're all give or take of a certain age. And I think that's really important.